So, Carrie, I have Carrie on the phone here. We're recording our conversation because not a couple of days ago, Carrie took me through a process that he had described as helping you discover your branding and refine your branding and your business. And what he took me through, I thought that was okay, sounds like a good idea. He had a process he wanted to share with me, and I'm always up for something like that. And so we sat down and we went through this process that we're going to describe here. And when I got to the other end of it, I realized that this is so much more than branding. This is really a self-discovery and a business discovery. It's kind of hard to describe. And one of the things we'll work on, Carrie and I, is figuring out how to properly describe this. But one of the overall ideas is that we've all heard the phrase that people work with people that they know, like, and trust. And this process can be adequately described as a process of knowing and liking and trusting yourself so that you can help other people understand who you are and thus facilitate the process of them beginning to know, like, and trust you. That's still very abstract, but I think as we go through this process here that it'll become much clearer. And so, Carrie, what I've got here is I've created a Photoshop screen where I've got the wording that we came up with originally all around the outside. I've got 4 boxes in there with nothing in them at the moment, and then the circle in the middle. And so I've written up everything that we talked about so that now I can point to it on our screen. We can talk about it. And if you can envision what I've got here, this is what people will be seeing as they listen to us talk.
Okay, great. And
okay.
So, Jerem, you've got that on. Did you send me a link or something, or?
No, I didn't. You're gonna.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, good.
Yeah, but I'm very impressed with Carrie and his ability to people through this process. So let me say one thing at the beginning here, that if anybody who's watching this is looking at it and not quite coming up with good descriptive words, or they're not quite figuring out how to create what you're seeing here for themselves, it would really help to go through this with Carrie, because I'll tell you now that he came up with most of the wording on this page. And because he listened to the things that I was describing to him, and he was coming up with the descriptive wording that we came up with here. So if we could, let's just kind of start at the beginning, and there's one of the kids now.
Okay.
And we'll start at the beginning, and there were 3 questions that you asked me that helped me come up with this wording here that we have on the periphery of this. Or maybe you should start over and describe what we're looking at here as your reverse brainstorming. I'll let you take it from here.
Okay. Basically, what I've done is I've adapted the very familiar and widely used mind map a diagram. It's a brainstorming diagram that's used all around the world to help people clarify. It's kind of like a visual outline, and it's normally used by writing down what the main point of something that you want to discuss or to write in the center, and then in the kind of radiating outwards, describe the secondary points, the tertiary or subsequent points, and going out as far as you need in order to get everything down. I've turned that around, and since the brand is a very it's clear and concise and compelling core message of what makes you as a business owner unique and special. And so our goal here is to go through this process that will start with your intangibles. And it's very important to note that we don't talk about what you do, and we don't talk about how you do it. Those are important points that are addressed most effectively somewhere else. For this exercise, we're going to talk about your intangibles. because that special combination is what makes you a unique individual and what makes you attractive and will help people see that there's a real value of working with you and talking to you. Um, and it's well brought out that a conversation is a perfect example of why it's important to know this about yourself. But it also has been used by a number of companies. So the intangibles go around the outside, and we'll talk about those, break those down a little bit.
Yeah.
And then,
sorry, go ahead.
No, that's all right. I'm just saying. Then we'll group the intangibles, and then the last, the third phase is to actually come up with a core message, a nuclear core message.
So we're working our way outside in through
Right.
a process that I thought was ingenious here. And so in order to create these words, now I got them all listed out here. It starts with intuitive and goes to trusting and top-down thinker and critical thinker and partially deaf, daddy, and organized and systematic. I'm still commenting on my kids in the background here. And but the questions that you asked me to bring out these wordings, these are ones that I don't have available here. I want to write them in as we go along here. So, yeah, start there.
Great. Well, I mean, there's a lot of different ways of describing your values and of grouping or categorizing your values. Three very helpful ones are to ask yourself, what is my approach when I do a job or a task? And secondly is, what's my attitude about the work that I'm doing? And finally, the third one is, what's my intent or my purpose that keeps me
attitude,
focused?
What
approach,
was the attitude?
Attitude, approach, and intent or purpose. And it helps. Some people are kind of lost because they're not used to defining themselves by their intangible qualities. So it's usually very helpful if you just can think about your attitude, your approach, and your intent.
Yeah, and so you asked me these questions involving these, and here's what I came up with here. So we talked about, you asked me how I approach a task. That was the first question, and I started to describe how, first thing I do is I have an idea, and I think we put it in the context of bringing something to life. When I have an idea that I want to do something or accomplish something, what do I do first? And I described how I get this idea and I mold around my head a little bit, and then I just start to tell everybody I know about it. And and then the next step is, once it seems like a good idea that might fly, then I look at it and I break down the major steps that we need to go through in order to bring it to life. And then I'll go to individuals who know more about these steps than I might and ask them about accomplishing these individual steps. And then at that point, if it still looks feasible and such, then we break down each of those major steps into minor steps, and we get started working on the minor steps. That was kind of, in a nutshell, the way that I do things. And from that description of my own way that I approach a task, so I can spell this better. So you, Carrie, were able to listen to that, and you came up with a lot of these words that I have around the outside. You talked about trusting in such a way as, I'm happy to tell people about my ideas, even with the possibility of somebody stealing them or something like that. But, that doesn't really bother me. And I think from the top down, you came up with that one, critical thinking, organized, systematic, were all words that came out of this particular exercise. And so anybody who's watching this, if you think about how you approach your general tasks, then you're looking for words that would describe you as you go through this process.
And that's one example, but some other people, their approach might be, for example, to gather all the available data. And a third person might say, well, my approach is to go find somebody who's been successful and just hang around with them or pick their brains as much as possible.
Right. Or
So,
somebody would say, I just dive right in and start doing
mhm,
it. Yeah.
mhm. So there's a lot of different approaches, and there's no better or worse. It's all about what works best for you.
Yeah, and what you discover is, oh, okay, this is how I do things, and then these are the words that describe some of those processes and describe me.
Hmm. And that together help begin to describe what makes you unique.
All
And
right. Yeah.
one of the sources of your value to the people you work with. Hmm.
Yeah.
Great.
All right. We ready to move on to attitude?
Right. Uh huh. What did you have for
Okay.
attitude? Remind me of that.
Let's see. I think attitude starts at, uh, I'm not sure if it's integrity or world of possibilities. And then I've got open, cautiously optimistic, opportunities everywhere, um, and I might have stopped there. So the next
Hmm.
one is caring, but that
Hmm.
let's see here. Maybe that's part of attitude. Continuous improvement and learning. Yeah. So I
Yeah.
think those ones were related to attitude. What did you ask me in order to start drawing those words out there?
Well, basically, it's everyone has a different attitude. Some people are nervous. Most um, successful business people aren't, but some people, when they're starting out, they're still kind of nervous about. Well, I'm not sure how I'm going to do this, but I'll try it anyway. Some people are very optimistic. Some are, as you said a minute ago, some people will just dive right in, and so they're kind of adventurous, or some people see themselves as a renegade. I'm going to find out how other people do it, and I'll do it differently. So that's kind of an attitude that helps you define yourself and your, how you work and your approach. It
Okay.
goes in with the approach. All of these overlap to some degree, but I think the attitude is very important, and it has to be your deeper attitude, not just I'm positive because I always say hello to people, or I always look on the bright side. A lot of that kind of attitude can be acquired from the outside. This is when you're quiet and silent. What drives you to see things in a certain way?
Nice. Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah, and so I have down, I have cautiously optimistic because I think we brought up the word optimistic, and I said, yeah, but not that didn't quite work for me.
Hmm.
And so I added the word cautiously because I like to be optimistic, but I don't like the high highs and the low lows. I try and even those out, and so I temper my optimism a
Hmm.
lot. And but then when I'm feeling down or things don't work out the way I want, then it's usually not quite. It's not debilitating. It's okay. And so as Kerry was adding some of these words in here that he had observed as I was describing my attitude towards life in general and business, and then we refined them a bit. And so this is something where you fiddle with the wording, you kind of come up with something that works for you, and you can feel when it's right.
Hmm. Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
And it's important. Of course, it's great to be a coach, and I enjoy it a lot. But I think it has to be a very, it's a joint effort, collaborative work, and so when you go through this process, you have to be ready, willing, and able to express uh, your opinion about what I might be recommending, and you have to allow your mind to be kind of flexible and creative a little bit sometimes.
yeah. And some of these things we talked about the wording and the intent of them and such. So
Hmm.
we could come to it because we have the word opportunistic down here, which is sometimes a negative connotation, but we decided it would be positive in this light and in this particular case. And it was very much a back and forth, which is one reason I said at the beginning, if you're having troubles coming up with some good wording that really describes your approach and your to tasks and your attitude and the intent that we'll talk about here in a moment, then it really helps a lot to go over it with somebody who knows what they're doing. And as far as I know, Kerry's the only one who knows what he's doing when it comes to this kind of thing. So I highly recommend getting in touch with him and having him walk you through it, because it was very useful for me. I would not have come up with a list that cut to the heart of my different facets of who I am.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so finally, and the third one was intent. And the intent is obviously very important, and a lot of people, this is kind of closest to the surface in a way, because when you do start a project or when you're working on something, you often have a clear idea of this is what I want to achieve. This is the kind of results that I would like to see come out of this. And sometimes it's very specific, but I think anyone who's had their own business for a while can recognize patterns. So if you're some people's intent might be to build a community. Some people might be to reach, get consensus very quickly, and then to get to work very quickly, and to so there might be very driven people who want to see some quick results. Some other people might want to have decisions. They might want, well, I'll make a decision and then I'll work out the details later. So so making quick decisions and being decisive. It can be described as part of your attitude or approach, but I think it can be an intent. The intent is to make things happen. And again, there's no judgment on any of these. They're all valuable, and they're all important to you because they're the way you do things.
Yeah. And so I just added one in on here because I had empowering, inspiring, and empowering. It's kind of a word that's overused a bit, but it really does fit the way that I'd like to see people interact with me, and the way that I would intend for them to leave our conversation with the abilities to do more than they had before when we talked. And that empowering seemed to be the right word for that.
Mm-hmm.
Being inspiring, authentically engaging. We talked about creating value for people and championing people's goals and their desires. And then I just added one in that I put in connector. And this is something that I'm still adding to myself. And I took some time to go over what we had talked about last time, and so I have a few extra things to put in the boxes than we had when we talked. But just to let people know, this is not something that you do this thing once, I would imagine.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because it's something you can look over and add to and really discover new things about yourself. And especially what we'll talk about next when it comes to connecting these things together and filling in these boxes that are in the blue here. You'll see how to congeal a little bit and form relationships with each other and kind of bring out some of the major aspects of who you are.
Great, and I'd just like to mention, you talked about how this can change. This is a neutral, this diagram, chart has no value to it. It's what you put into it that gives it the value, and what you add to it, then it begins to acquire a real value. And because of that, it's not what a lot of other experts or a lot of other people who have processes, they say, oh, you have to follow these steps and you have to do this and all of that. It's once you begin filling this in, it becomes your chart, your diagram, and a reflection of what's important to you. And so I always encourage people to make it their own and to make any changes that they wish, and to use it as a kind of a living document. And I think that you'll find if you start using it that there's applications for it that you might not have anticipated. So I just want to mention that that it's a living document because you're alive and because you have real value as an individual.
Yeah, and let me add to that too. It's also, of course, very personal,
Exactly.
and it's not really meant to be posted on a wall and let other people see. Because the things that we'll talk about, even this core in the center here, I've got an oval. It's a light red color just to set it apart. These things actually, unlike a mission statement or something like that that usually have up where people can see it so that everybody's kind of gauging themselves by it, this is going to be a very personal thing, something you won't really show people. And as you figure yourself out and you develop this, it'll guide you in your business decisions and how you interact with people, but not necessarily anything that anybody's ever going to see.
Very good point. Yeah. Great.
All right.
So you want to go on to the second phase then?
Let's do it. So what we did next here is we came up with, what would you say, groupings?
Right. Groups, I called it.
Okay. Let me, I'm switching to my paintbrush here. And so what we did is we looked at these words that we had just around the outside edges here. And what Carrie asked me to do, I should have you describe this. You did a great job of helping me walk through this.
Okay. Well, again, this is it gets more intuitive as you go along. And it becomes more of an expression of who you are and how you see the world and how you see yourself. Because at the second phase, we're going to look around the circle of intangibles that make you different and find out which ones you think go well together. And it's not necessarily that they're the same. Sometimes you might take a couple that are very different, but they seem to fit. They're two sides of the same coin, or they support each other, or so in some way it's a natural, organic fit between these different intangible qualities and values, and we put those together, and there's different ways of doing it, but you want those to be identified as a group within those the inner circle of boxes there, or circles.
Yeah. So what we did, you told me to take a look at all the words and say, hey, do any of these seem to naturally kind of fit together somehow? And this is a very open question here. It was very, as I looked at it, and I just kind of went with the things that started to strike, that pop out at me. And what I came up with, and you said, okay, put a number 1 next to the first set of words that seem to work together. And so I had a 1 next to trusting. And I'll just go ahead and do this while I'm at it.
Right.
I had a 1 next to caring. And then empowering, as well as value. So those were all my 1s. And we got done looking at that, and we said, okay, well, that's good. Did we move right on into doing 2s then?
Sure.
At this point? Okay.
Right.
And so we said 2, and I have 2s as critical thinker. This is just, once again, I went over each of these, all the words here, and just looked for something that seemed like a pattern. And so critical thinker, we also had organized. We had open. Opportunities everywhere, the opportunistic. And that was them. Looks like. Okay, and 3s, I'll just go through this real fast. Top-down thinker was a 3. Systematic. Continuous improvement and learning. I believe those were the ones that stood out to me there. Number 4 was trusting. And you can have more than one word in these categories here. So 4 was also integrity, open, and empowering, and authentically engaging. Now that's what we had as far as the ones that seemed to have some kind of connection.
Mm-hmm.
And then once we had established that, we came up with 4, and can apparently do more than that, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
But
you
then,
can as many as you want. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so at this point, we looked at what we had, and we said, okay, so what connects all the ones together? What is that? What's the connection between them?
Mm-hmm.
And why did I choose those?
Right. How would you name the umbrella that they all fit under?
Right, exactly. Mm-hmm. Because there's something that connects them. It's something. Mm-hmm. What is that? And we had talked about planting seeds. You mentioned Johnny Appleseed was an idea, and we're looking for just a couple of words, ideally, that fit everything together. And I sat down, I thought about this later on, and the wording that I came up with that really works for me was, I said, and I'll put it up here, was lasting influence.
Wow.
And it's important to me, the trust and being empowering and caring and adding value all worked for me in such a way that I said, I want my interactions with people to have this lasting influence, so that they go away and later on they look at our interaction together and they say, wow, that was something that had a good impact on my life. And those were all the ones, and that's what we came up with for the ones. The 2s, I'll just put them out here. We don't have to go into each of them, but we talked about turning possibilities into opportunities, which I liked there.
Great.
All the 3s together, I came up with this one a little bit later on, so we didn't.
Right.
We had been talking for like an hour and a half at this point, but I came up with innovative solutions designer.
Wow. Great.
I like to design solutions, and I like them to be different. I like them to be innovative, and solving problems that your current solutions just don't come up with. And the word designer seemed to work for me really well, because not only did I just think them up, I didn't create, I didn't put them together, I didn't just think them up. I took it from inception to putting it into the real world and then having it actually work. And designing seemed to encompass that. And then the last one for all the 4s was building fulfilling relationships. And we came up with that one while we were on there. And so I'll label this 1, 2, 3, and 4 inside the actual boxes. And
Great.
That's about as far as we got right there. And I don't know if we'd be able to fill in the center circle with what we've got here, or we should just leave it for people to figure out. But I'm interested in the process of coming up with that, and would be happy to have people listen to what we're, how we're arriving at that.
Yeah. Well, this is the hardest. In a way, it's the hardest because it means that you have to be more concise, and you have to combine words that work well together and yet are very different. And I don't know if you think it would be appropriate if I gave the example of that my client.
Sure. Yeah. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to take these 4 boxes and combine them into a very concise, a couple of words, if possible, idea.
Right. And the reason for this, again, we kind of mentioned it earlier, but the real goal here is for each person who goes through this process to have that nuclear core message, to have a message that will hopefully never change, because it reflects everything that you've been and why you do things. And I'm hoping we can include the link to that TED.com video, because I think that would be helpful. But it's why you do things, and to put it in a way that will inspire you. Every time you look at this phrase, from now on, once you have it. It will remind you about what makes you unique and what's most important to you, and what you want to share with other people. However, I strongly recommend that you keep this core message, this final mantra, to yourself. It should be a very powerful short statement, and as such, you don't want to dilute the power. You don't want to open it up too much at all, really. You want to keep that as your personal mantra. And working with me or with another communications professional, you can say, well, I want to communicate this in this kind of piece. And the professional can help you say, okay, well, if this is important to you, then this is how we'll communicate. This is all pretty theoretical, so let me just share briefly.
Yeah, share that example. I think that's a good one. And maybe we'll just leave mine for my own self to fill in here.
Yeah, and again, it's something that normally, even if you had it, Jerem, maybe it's something that you don't want to share, right?
Maybe so. Yeah.
Because then people,
yet, so we'll figure it out,
so people might think, oh, that's his tagline, because it's so easy to pigeonhole people, and we don't want them to pigeonhole you. You've got so much. They can get an idea about who you are and how you do things by looking at all the great materials that you've got online, and that's how they should define you. So that central core message is something. And having said that, I want to spill the beans on one of my clients' core messages. She's one of the first people I worked with. This is a lady in Houston who sells $50,000 to $60,000 kitchen cabinet sets. And because of the price, it means that her customers or clients are very successful people because they can afford something like that. And because of that, you can also infer that they understand and appreciate the importance of details in any project. And so they are looking for an individual to put these kitchen cabinets in for them that they're investing so much money on, to be passionate about details and to take every detail as a personal challenge. Because we were talking about cabinets which might be separated by 1/16 of an inch and still work well together. So it was quite a challenging project, each one of the projects that she was doing for her clients. So after we talked about it and we went through this mantra process together, I helped her come up with her mantra, which is 3 words, which I consider the ideal. And her mantra is, caress the details. And just to describe so that you can understand what might help you make the most powerful possible mantra for yourself, it has an action verb in it, caress, and it has a strong noun in it with a strong emotional appeal. So both of them have some emotional resonance, and they are words that normally don't fit together. Usually, I've never heard anybody use these words in the same phrase, and so that makes it more memorable, and it adds extra power to it. It's like John Lennon and Paul McCartney. They really didn't get along. They didn't even like each other in certain ways, and yet they made great stuff because the dynamic tension that they brought to every song that they wrote together. And so these words with that kind of dynamic tension involved in them is going to make them more powerful. And then each one of those words can become the basis for your content that you're going to be creating as you do a website or a marketing piece or anything, even a tagline or an advertising, or a logo or whatever. And so
I can tell you that I've already started incorporating some of these things into just the most recent webinar. At least I tried to. I don't think I did a very good job of it, but it'll get better as I go along.
I noticed, and I appreciate. I appreciated that when I heard it. So, anyway, so that's those are the goals. It has to be something that you can keep, like as an amulet, as a token of who you are and what makes you unique. And so you can, whenever you feel down or depressed or distracted or something, this will hopefully help you um, regain your poise and your balance. And that's one of the long-term goals, and one reason why I highly recommend that you keep it private.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd be putting this up on too high of a pedestal or making too big a deal of it, but I can imagine that a lot of times if you are looking at certain actions that you can take or ways that you can go, if you can compare the different options to what you have on this chart, I think it would probably guide you to doing the things that would not only make you the most happy, but also have you create the most value in the world. You're really acting in a way that's true to yourself.
Great. And, that's a very important point, because leadership in the internet age is based on value. And if this will help you add more value to everything that you do, you will naturally, as a business owner, be more than just a provider of products and services, but you will evolve into a leader in your industry and in your community. And I really believe, and I've been told that this is true by folks that have used this in the past, that it gives them that sense that this is something that I can lead on. And of course, a leader needs followers. And when you have this in place, every time you meet someone, you can ask yourself, you can ask this person a couple of questions and very quickly determine, is this person a good fit for me? In other words, would they appreciate and be able to work with this core message and this core value that I have? And so it, I think, would speed up the process of deciding on whether or not to collaborate or partner or even recruit someone as an employee or whatever. So I believe it has a lot of subsidiary benefits to someone in an age in which you have to communicate and make decisions very quickly. If that makes sense.
Kind of speaks to the question. Yeah, that makes sense to me. I hope it makes sense to anybody else watching this. And for me, this kind of speaks to the question that was asked earlier. We ran this process past some people in a group setting, and one of them asked, so how does this apply to actually guiding a business to make people know, like, and trust your business better? And what I came away with from that, and I'd love to hear your take on this as well, Kerry, of course, but the idea that I came by was we talked a bit about Steve Jobs and how he guided Apple, and how Apple is really kind of a projection of his persona, the passion that he had for things, and it really kind of left its mark on the company that he created. And it would seem that if anybody who was in a leadership position or in a business understood how they worked like this and could map it out, it would help them guide the business in such a way that the business itself would assume a lot of these personalities, and the people who were attracted to these personalities would naturally be attracted to the business and become clients and want to interact with the people in the business and the business itself. That's what I took away from that.
Absolutely. And since these days, people say that everything is marketing. Whatever you do as a business owner is, to some degree, and in one aspect or another, is a marketing activity. And any marketing activity is essentially a conversation between you and your customers or your prospects. And so to the extent that this will help you have more coherent, more relevant, and more valuable conversations, it will also enrich your general marketing, all your marketing materials and all. And as Jeremy was just saying, it will give you a consistency and a vivid way of describing what makes your company unique that will make you feel more confident. It will, as I said, help you make the right kind of contacts, the ideal contacts, and will, when you are making marketing messages, it will help keep them uniquely yours. The goal is for someone to say, "Oh, this must be Jaron who said this. He's the only person that would say something like this." And I believe that it's at least possible to use this in that way and to make it happen. It's a big it's a big ticket item, but I think it's possible.
It is, but this is a very flexible flexible process here, and so I can see how it would relate in a lot of different ways. Not in business, of course, in your personal relationships and how you interact with people on on many levels. So I was really quite excited when we got done with this, because I looked at it and I've fleshed it out a bit more, and so I'm going to go for that circle in the middle now, and we'll see if I can come up with something there. But it really helped me see how I like to do things, and because I can see a flow through this here as far as the way that I like to interact with people and add value to their lives through the seeing the possibilities and turning them into opportunities, and creating innovative solutions, and then using those to create a lasting influence on people, and through that influence and that interaction, building fulfilling relationships, those lifelong friendships, or at least associations, and I can see a bit of a flow through there, and how I would tie all that together, I have no idea, but it'll be fun to figure that out. And it's already influencing the way that I look at my marketing, and I'm not sure how it'll influence me in the future, but I expect that it will.
Great. Well, I'm glad I could be of use.
Yeah, definitely. So I don't know if we have anything else to add to this right now, but this was what I was hoping to bring together on this call that we arranged to have here, so that others could get a feel for how this works in a very straightforward manner. And once again, anybody who is working on something like this, I would highly recommend contacting Kerry and having him walk you through it, because he added a lot of insight into every step into this, that it would not be as filled out and as complete as it is right now if I was just trying to use my own understanding of this, because Gary's been through this with many people. He's very good at asking questions that help draw out these different things, and that's the first thing that really impressed me in our conversation, was that he knew how to work with me, so that he helped me discover these things and fine-tune them in such a way that I felt I was very much the owner of what's on this page right now. And that takes skill. That's not something that you just do, in your sleep until you get good enough at it. And so I appreciate that, and would recommend anybody who would like to have that experience and be able to, have a very impactful diagram like we have here, to contact Kerry and
thank you very much.
Get that started.
And that's high praise indeed, coming from someone who I admire and respect as much as you, and with all of your expertise and all the people you've worked with. It's very gratifying that I've been able that this has helped you to the degree that it has. So
yeah, already, and I expect it'll help a lot more in the future. So
great.
Yeah, so that's about all we had as far as I know. So thank you, Kerry.
Thank you very much.
For being on here and adding your expertise to this whole process here. I think I hope a lot of people will get a lot out of it.
Thank you. I certainly enjoyed doing it with you. Thanks.